The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside Covenant Creek's trading post, and Silas Thorne watched from the shadows of his loaded wagon. He'd come down from his mountain homestead for supplies, nothing more. The last thing he expected was to see a woman stumble out wearing a burlap sack over her head, her hands bound loosely in front of her. "There's your bride, Garrick," the driver announced to the man waiting. A banker Silas recognized, soft-handed and cruel-eyed. "Came all the way from Philadelphia like you paid for." Garrick circled her like a vulture assessing carrion. "Take that thing off her head." The woman's voice came muffled through the fabric. "Please. He said if I was ugly, he wouldn't want me. They made me wear this so he could refuse me before seeing my face, return me like damaged goods." Silas's jaw tightened. He'd seen many things in his 32 years, war, death, betrayal, but this turned his stomach. Garrick yanked the sack off roughly. Silas's breath caught. She was breathtaking, raven hair tumbling past her shoulders, eyes the color of summer storms. Skin like porcelain despite the journey's dust. A purple bruise shadowed her left cheekbone. "Well now," Garrick smiled like a snake. "Aren't you pretty as a picture? Someone's idea of a joke, sending beauty in a bag?" Before you continue with this story, I'd like to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. I'm curious, where are you listening to this story from today? The woman lifted her chin, despite the trembling in her hands. "The marriage broker said I was too proud, too educated, that Western men wanted obedient wives, not ones who'd read more books than them. So they prepared me for rejection." "Oh, I'll take you." Garrick reached for her arm. "Teach you obedience myself." "No." Silas stepped forward, surprising himself. "She's not going with you." Garrick spun. "Thorne, this isn't your concern. I paid good money." "How much?" "What?" Silas pulled out his coin purse, the profits from his last fur trade. "How much for the contract?" The woman's storm-gray eyes fixed on him, wide with confusion and something that might have been hope. Garrick's face reddened. "She's spoken for $200. Silas dropped the coins on the trading post barrel. "That's double what any mail-order bride costs. Take it and consider the contract broken." The driver shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, that's highly irregular." "But legal." Silas cut him off. "Contracts transferable upon payment. That's territory law." Garrick snatched the money, his expression poisonous. "You're welcome to her, mountain man. She'll freeze or starve up in those hills. Won't be so proud then." He stormed toward his carriage. Silence settled like snow. The woman stared at Silas, her bound hands pressed against her chest. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Silas pulled his knife. She flinched and carefully cut her bonds. "No one should be sold like livestock." He studied the bruise on her face. "Who hit you?" "The broker's wife. Said I needed to learn my place." Her voice cracked slightly. "I thought coming west was choosing freedom. Instead, I've been handled like cargo for 6 weeks. What's your name?" "Adelaide. Adelaide Winters." She rubbed her wrists. "And you just spent $200 on a stranger who can't even cook properly." Despite everything, Silas almost smiled. "Can you learn?" "I can read Latin and calculate compound interest. I imagine I can learn to cook." Adelaide straightened her travel-worn dress. "But I should be clear, if you expect. That is, if you think because you paid." "I expect you to survive the winter." Silas turned toward his wagon. "I've got a cabin 7 miles up. 2 rooms. You'll have your own space. Work if you want to earn your keep, or rest if you need to heal. Come spring, I'll take you wherever you want to go." "That's all?" He met her eyes directly. "That's all." Adelaide's throat worked as she swallowed. "Why?" "Because I remember what it's like to feel trapped." Silas offered his hand to help her into the wagon, "and because no one should wear a sack over their head like there's something shameful." She took his hand. Her fingers were cold, delicate, but her grip was firm. The ride up the mountain was quiet except for the creak of wheels and the whisper of wind through pine. Adelaide studied everything: the towering trees, the crystal creek running alongside the trail, the way sunlight filtered through branches like cathedral windows. "It's beautiful," she finally said. "It's isolated. After Philadelphia's crowds, that sounds like paradise." Silas glanced at her. Most city women he'd met complained about frontier roughness. "You might change your mind come January when the snow's up to the windows." "I might not." Adelaide pulled her thin shawl tighter. "Tell me about your cabin." "Built it myself. Stone fireplace, good roof, well 20 yards from the door. I trap and trade furs, hunt for meat, grow what vegetables survive this altitude." He paused. "It's not fancy." "Does it have books?" "Few. Bible, some Shakespeare, a farming almanac." Her face lit up. "Shakespeare? Which plays?" "Hamlet and The Tempest. We are such stuff as dreams are made on," she quoted softly, "and our little life is rounded with a sleep." Silas felt something shift in his chest. "You know you're Prospero." "I was a schoolteacher before." Adelaide's expression clouded. "Before my father died and left debts, the bank took everything. Marriage seemed my only option. Could have stayed east. Found work. I tried. No one wants a woman teacher who's too pretty. Their wives get jealous. And the work that was available." She didn't finish, but Silas understood. The cabin appeared around a bend, solid pine logs, a stone chimney releasing lazy smoke, a covered porch where Silas's hound, Bear, waited. The dog bounded toward them, tail wagging. Adelaide laughed, the first genuine joy Silas had heard from her, and crouched to greet him. "Hello, beautiful boy. What's your name?" "Bear. He's friendlier than his name suggests." She scratched behind the dog's ears, and Bear practically melted. "I like him already." Silas showed her inside. The main room held a table, 2 chairs, the fireplace and shelves lined with tools and provisions. A ladder led to a sleeping loft. "That's mine." Silas gestured upward. "You'll take the side room." He opened a door to reveal a smaller space with a bed, a chest and a window overlooking the valley. "It's not much." "It has a door that locks from the inside," Adelaide interrupted, her voice thick. "That's more than I've had in weeks." Their eyes met, and Silas saw the exhaustion beneath her composure, the fear she'd been carrying like a stone. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "I promise you that." Adelaide nodded, not quite trusting herself to speak. Over the following days, they developed a rhythm. Silas rose before dawn to check his trap lines. Adelaide, despite her claims of cooking incompetence, proved resourceful. She studied the supplies, experimented carefully, and by the 3rd day produced a venison stew that was actually edible. "You're learning?" Silas said, surprised. "I'm reading." Adelaide showed him a battered cookbook she'd found, and applying logic, cooking is just chemistry with tastier results. He found himself almost smiling more in her presence. She filled the cabin with questions and observations, reading passages from Shakespeare aloud by the fire, teaching Bear ridiculous tricks. But nightmares plagued her. Silas would wake to muffled crying from her room, and it took all his willpower not to check on her. She'd asked for privacy, and he'd respect it. One morning, he found her examining his rifle. "Want to learn to shoot?" The question surprised them both. Adelaide set the weapon down carefully. "Would you teach me? Winter's coming. You should know how to defend yourself." He didn't add, "in case something happens to me." They spent afternoons in a clearing, Adelaide learning to handle the rifle's weight, to steady her breathing, to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. She had a good eye and steady hands once she overcame her initial fear. "You're a natural," Silas said after she hit a target at 50 yards. "I'm motivated." Adelaide reloaded with growing confidence. I never want to feel helpless again. On the fourth week, a storm rolled in. Early snow that blanketed everything in white silence. They were trapped inside for 3 days, and in that forced proximity, walls began to crumble. "Tell me about the war," Adelaide asked one evening, watching him whittle by the fire. Silas's knife stilled. "Why? You have scars, not just the ones I can see." She leaned forward. "And sometimes you wake at night too. I hear you in the loft." He'd thought he was quiet. "Some things are better left buried. Are they? Or do they just rot underground, poisoning everything above?" The insight startled him. Silas set down his carving. "I was at Shiloh. Lost my whole unit in a single afternoon. Came home to find my wife had died of fever while I was gone. My son, too. He was 3 years old." Adelaide's hand covered her mouth. "Silas, moved up here to get away from memories. Built this cabin on land where nothing had died that I loved." His voice was rough. "Worked for 5 years. Then you showed up with a sack over your head, and something in my chest that I thought was dead started beating again." The confession hung between them like smoke. Adelaide rose slowly, crossed to where he sat, and did something unexpected. She took his scarred hand in both of hers. "I'm not her. I can't replace what you lost. I know. But I'm here, and I'm real, and I see you, Silas Thorne, not just the mountain man, but the person who spent $200 he probably couldn't afford on a stranger's freedom." He looked at their joined hands, his rough and marked by survival, hers still learning calluses but strong. "I see you too, Adelaide. I see a woman who wore that sack with her head high, who learned to shoot in 3 weeks, who quotes Shakespeare to my dog." His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "I see someone worth saving." She leaned in, her forehead nearly touching his. "Then save me by letting me stay. Not just until spring, really stay." "Adelaide, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I feel safer with you than I've ever felt anywhere. And I think you might feel less alone when I'm here." Silas cupped her bruised cheek gently. The mark had faded to yellow-green now. "You deserve better than a haunted man in a mountain cabin." "I deserve choice, and I choose this. I choose you." Her eyes shimmered. "If you'll have me." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. But Adelaide kissed him back with surprising strength, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they parted, both breathing hard, Silas rested his forehead against hers. "I'll go slow. I won't rush you." "I know. That's why I trust you." They sat by the fire until it burned to embers, hands intertwined, Bear snoring at their feet. Outside, snow continued falling, but inside something warmer than fire was kindling. The trouble came in December. Silas was checking the perimeter when he heard horses, 3 riders approaching from the valley. He recognized Garrick on the lead horse, flanked by 2 hired guns. Adelaide was inside. Silas whistled sharply, their warning signal, and saw the cabin door close, heard the bar drop into place. "Thorne!" Garrick dismounted. "I've come for what's mine. Nothing here belongs to you." Silas stood his ground, rifle ready but not raised. Yet. "That woman is legally my bride. The contract was legally transferred. You took the money." Garrick's face twisted. "I've got a judge who says different. Territory magistrate claims coercion, that I was pressured into the sale." "You lying snake!" The hired guns drew their weapons. Silas's finger moved to his trigger, calculating. He could take maybe 2 before they got him. But that left Adelaide vulnerable. The cabin door flew open. "Stop!" Adelaide stood on the porch. Her own rifle, Silas had given her one of his smaller weapons, aimed steady at Garrick. "I'm not property to be claimed. I'm a person with rights." "You're a woman," Garrick sneered. "You have the rights men give you. Then let's see what a woman can do." Adelaide fired, not at Garrick, but at the ground between his horse's front hooves. The animal reared, throwing him backward. Silas used the distraction. He fired twice in quick succession. One shot disabled the first hired gun's weapon. The second sent the other man's hat flying. Both men dove for cover. "Next shots won't miss," Silas called out. "And my wife," he emphasized the word, "doesn't miss at all." Adelaide had already reloaded, her aim now fixed on Garrick as he struggled to his feet. "I can put this bullet through your shoulder from here. Want to test me?" Garrick looked between them, Mountain Man and the woman he'd underestimated, and something like fear crossed his face. "This isn't over." "It is." Silas moved to stand beside Adelaide. "You come back here, you won't leave alive. That's not a threat. It's geography. Bodies disappear in these mountains, Garrick. No one would even look." The banker remounted, his companions scrambling to follow. "You're both crazy." "Maybe," Adelaide said coolly, "but we're crazy together. Now get off our land." They watched the riders disappear into the trees. Only when the hoofbeats faded did Adelaide lower her rifle. Then her hands began to shake. Silas took the weapon gently, set it aside, and pulled her into his arms. "You were incredible. I was terrified." She buried her face against his chest. "I thought they'd kill you." "Takes more than Garrick to kill me." He stroked her hair. "But you called yourself my wife." Adelaide pulled back to look at him. "I did. Was I wrong to—" "No." Silas kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "But if you're going to be my wife, let's do it properly. Not because of contracts or convenience, but because I love you, Adelaide Winters. I love your courage and your questions and the way you quote poetry to my dog. I love that you stood on that porch ready to fight for us." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you too. I've loved you since you cut my bonds and treated me like I was worth something, worth everything. Then marry me. Really marry me." "Yes. God, yes." The ceremony happened 2 weeks later in Covenant Creek's small church, with the Reverend and a few witnesses, townsfolk who'd heard about Adelaide standing down Garrick and decided she was all right for a mountain woman. She wore a simple blue dress Silas had traded furs for, and wildflowers in her hair, despite the winter cold. When the Reverend asked, "Do you take this woman?" "I do," Silas said, before the sentence finished. "I really do." Adelaide laughed through happy tears. Their kiss was witnessed by applause and Bear's enthusiastic barking. The ride back to the cabin was peaceful, the winter sun casting long shadows through snow-laden pines. Adelaide sat pressed against Silas, his arm around her waist, both of them grinning like fools. "So, Mrs. Thorne," Silas said as he lifted her down from the wagon, "how does it feel to be married to a mountain man? Ask me tomorrow." Adelaide pulled him toward the cabin door, eyes sparkling with promise. "After I've fully explored the benefits of the arrangement." That night, with fire crackling and stars visible through the window, they learned each other slowly, Adelaide's hesitation giving way to trust, Silas's gentleness revealing the depth of his feeling. "Go slow," she whispered at one point. "It hurts." "I'll die before I hurt you." Silas kissed away her tears, her fears, replacing them with something bright and wild and utterly consuming. Afterward, tangled together in the lamplight, Adelaide traced the scars on his chest. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, for treating me like I was a person, not property, from the very first moment." "Adelaide." He captured her hand, pressed it over his beating heart. "You froze my heart the moment you took off that sack. I thought I was dead inside, but you brought me back to life. That's something I can never repay." "You don't have to." She kissed him softly. "We saved each other. That's what love does. It makes us strong enough to save ourselves." "Together," he murmured. "Together," she agreed. They fell asleep like that, intertwined and whole. The past's ghosts finally laid to rest. Spring came with wildflowers and melting snow. Adelaide's garden began sprouting green shoots. She'd ordered books through the trading post, enough to start a small mountain school for children in the valley. Silas built her a desk near the window where she could read and write and plan. One morning, she found him carving something new, not a tool, but something delicate, a bird taking flight. "That's beautiful," she said, resting her chin on his shoulder. "It's you." He turned to kiss her. "The woman who came here in a sack and flew free." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes, happy ones this time. "We both flew free. You just needed someone to remind you that you had wings." Bear woofed his agreement from the doorway. They stood together on their porch as summer arrived, watching the valley bloom, the creek run silver with snowmelt, the mountains stand eternal and protective. Adelaide's hand rested on the slight swell of her belly, though she hadn't told Silas yet, wanted to wait for the perfect moment. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I was so scared that day, so certain I was being delivered to a nightmare." Adelaide leaned into his warmth. "Instead, I found home. You are home." Silas turned her to face him. "You'll always be home, Adelaide. From that first moment when I saw your face and my heart froze, then immediately melted, I knew you were meant for these mountains, for this life, for me." The bride with a sack over her head, Adelaide smiled. Who would have thought she'd freeze a mountain man's heart and then set it on fire? "Who would have thought?" Silas agreed, and kissed his wife as the sun set over their kingdom of pine and stone and love. Years later, their children would ask about the wooden bird on the mantel, the one Papa carved for Mama. And Adelaide would tell them the story of a woman in a sack, a mountain man with a frozen heart, and $200 that bought not a bride, but freedom, real freedom, the kind that comes with choice and love and partnership. "Your father," she'd say, eyes soft with memory, "saw me when I couldn't see myself, and I helped him see that living isn't the same as surviving. That love doesn't replace what we've lost. It makes us brave enough to try again." And Silas, listening from his chair, would add, "Best $200 I ever spent." Their children would groan at the romance, the way children do, but secretly they'd hope to find love like that. Fierce and gentle, wild and safe, a partnership forged in frontier hardship and tempered by absolute devotion. In the mountains of the American West, where survival was hard and life harder, two broken people had found each other and built something unbreakable, together, always together. The weeks following their wedding settled into something Adelaide had never experienced: contentment. Real, bone-deep peace that came from waking beside someone who saw all of her and loved her anyway. But peace in the mountains was always temporary. It was late February when the fever came. Adelaide woke to find Silas shivering despite the fire, his skin burning to the touch. "Just a cold," he muttered, trying to rise for his morning trap check. "You're staying in bed." Adelaide pushed him back down with surprising strength. "I'll handle the traps." "You can't—" His protest dissolved into coughing. "I've been watching you for months. I know the route. I know how to reset them." She was already dressing in her warmest clothes, strapping on the knife Silas had given her. "Bear will come with me. We'll be fine." Silas's fever-bright eyes held worry, but he was too weak to argue. 3 hours. If you're not back in 3 hours, I'm coming after you. You can barely stand, mountain man." Adelaide kissed his forehead. "But I love you for the thought." The trapline was harder than she'd anticipated. Snow had deepened overnight, making each step a struggle. But Adelaide had grown stronger these months. Her arms had muscle now, her hands had calluses, her legs could manage the mountain's demands. She found the first trap sprung but empty. The second held a rabbit, which she reset carefully, remembering Silas's patient instructions. The third trap was missing entirely. Bear growled low in his throat. Adelaide's hand went to her rifle. What is it, boy? Movement in the trees, too large for deer, too deliberate for elk. A grizzly emerged from the pines, massive and hungry from hibernation interrupted, between Adelaide and the cabin, between her and Silas. Her heart hammered. Silas had taught her, never run from a bear. Make yourself large. Make noise. But this bear wasn't acting right. It was thin, desperate, and moving toward her with purpose. Adelaide fired a warning shot over its head. The bear barely flinched. She backed slowly toward a cluster of rocks, trying to remember everything Silas had said. The bear followed, closing distance. Bear, the dog, positioned himself between Adelaide and the predator. Hackles raised, teeth bared. "No!" Adelaide breathed. "Bear, come here!" The grizzly charged. Adelaide fired, hit the bear's shoulder, but it wasn't enough to stop the momentum. The animal roared, swiping at the dog. Bear yelped and tumbled into the snow. Pure instinct took over. Adelaide worked the rifle's action, aimed for the heart, her hands steady despite terror, and fired again. The bear dropped 3 yards from her, its final breath misting in the cold air. Adelaide's legs gave out. She sat hard in the snow, rifle across her lap, staring at what she'd done. Then Bear's whimper jolted her back. The dog was bleeding from a gash across his ribs, deep but not fatal if she could get him home. Adelaide tore strips from her petticoat, bound the wound as best she could, and then faced an impossible choice. The bear was worth a fortune in hide and meat, but Bear needed help now, and Silas was sick. "We're coming back for you," she told the dead grizzly, and then half-carried, half-dragged the dog toward home. Silas was on the porch when she stumbled into view, despite his fever. He took one look at Adelaide covered in blood, Bear wounded in her arms, and his face went white. "I'm fine," Adelaide gasped. "It's not my blood. Grizzly attacked. I killed it. Bear's hurt." Silas took the dog from her, his hands gentle despite their trembling. Inside, now. They worked together, Adelaide holding Bear steady while Silas cleaned and stitched the wound with hands that shook from fever and fear. The dog whined but stayed still, seeming to understand they were helping. "He positioned himself between me and the bear," Adelaide said softly. "He was ready to die for me." "He loves you." Silas tied off the last stitch. "Like I do. Adelaide, you could have been killed." "But I wasn't." She cupped his feverish face. "I survived because you taught me how, because you believed I could be strong enough." Silas pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again," says the man who's burning with fever and came outside in the cold. Adelaide felt him swaying. "Come on, bed, both of you." She spent the next 3 days nursing them both, forcing broth down Silas, changing Bear's bandages, keeping the fire high and the cabin warm. The bear carcass waited in the snow, preserved by the cold. On the 4th day, Silas's fever broke. He woke to find Adelaide asleep in the chair beside the bed, Bear curled at her feet, both of them exhausted. "Adelaide." He touched her shoulder gently. She jerked awake, immediately checking his forehead. "Your fever, it's gone." "Thank God." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so scared. You were saying things in your sleep. Calling for your son, for your first wife. I thought I was losing you. Hey!" Silas pulled her onto the bed beside him, cradled her against his chest. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that. Life is so fragile up here. That bear, your fever, what if next time? Then we face it together." He tilted her chin up. "Adelaide, you killed a grizzly. Alone. In the snow. You saved Bear and made it home and took care of all of us. You're not the woman who arrived in a sack anymore. You're a mountain woman. My mountain woman." She kissed him then, deep and desperate, relief and fear and love all tangled together. "I need you, Silas. Not just want. Need. I need you too." His hands tangled in her hair. More than air. More than anything. They made love slowly, carefully, Silas still weak, Adelaide still shaky from her ordeal, but it was profound in its tenderness, a reaffirmation that they were both alive, both here, both choosing each other again and again. Afterward, Adelaide lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I have something to tell you." "What?" "I'm pregnant, about 2 months along." Silas went completely still. Then his arms tightened around her, and she felt wetness on her hair, tears. "Adelaide." I was going to wait for the perfect moment, but I realized this is the perfect moment. We're alive. We're together. We're going to have a baby. She looked up at him. "Are you happy?" "Happy." His voice broke. "I'm terrified and thrilled and... Adelaide, I never thought I'd get this again. A family, a future. We have both now." She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "And this baby will know a father who is strong and gentle, who teaches his wife to shoot, and his dog to fetch, and his children to face the world with courage." Silas kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, and a mother who kills bears and nurses the sick and loves with her whole heart. "Together," Adelaide whispered. "Together," he agreed. Spring brought the thaw and with it unexpected visitors. Adelaide was working in her garden, small shoots of lettuce and carrots poking through dark earth, when Bear started barking. She straightened to see a wagon approaching, driven by a woman about her age with copper hair and a practical expression. "Hello," the woman called. "I'm looking for Adelaide Thorne." "That's me." Adelaide wiped dirt from her hands, suddenly conscious of her work dress and mud-stained apron. "Can I help you?" The woman climbed down. "I'm Margaret Brennan. I live in the valley near Covenant Creek. I heard you were a teacher back east." Am. Adelaide corrected herself. "Why do you ask?" "Because there are 11 children in this valley with no school. Their parents want them educated, but we've had no teacher since old Mr. Saunders passed 2 years ago." Margaret's eyes were hopeful. "Would you consider teaching? We could build a schoolhouse, provide a small salary. I'd need to discuss it with my husband," Adelaide said carefully, though excitement was already building in her chest. "Of course. I brought my son, Timothy. He's 8 and reads at a 3rd-year level, but he's hungry for more." Margaret gestured to the wagon where a dark-haired boy sat with a book. "Tim, come say hello." The boy approached shyly. "Ma'am, is it true you know Latin?" Adelaide smiled. "Some. Do you want to learn?" His face lit up like sunrise. "Could I?" "We'll see." She looked at Margaret. "Give me 2 days to speak with Silas. Come back Thursday." After they left, Adelaide found herself buzzing with possibility, teaching again, using her education for something beyond survival. But would Silas approve? She needn't have worried. "Of course you should do it," Silas said that evening, looking up from his wood carving. "You've been talking about those books you ordered for weeks. I knew you wanted to teach. But I'm pregnant, and the cabin work is manageable." He pulled her onto his lap. "Adelaide, you're not just my wife. You're your own person with dreams and skills. If teaching makes you happy, then teach." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He kissed her neck. "Besides, having the smartest teacher in the territory as my wife makes me look good." Adelaide laughed, then turned serious. "It means I'll be gone during the day. You'll be alone." "I've been alone for 5 years. I think I remember how it works." Silas's hand rested on her stomach. "And soon enough I'll have company. We both will." The schoolhouse went up in 6 weeks, a community effort that showed Adelaide how much the valley wanted education for their children. Silas worked alongside the other men, his carpentry skills evident in the straight walls and tight corners. On opening day, 11 children sat on rough-hewn benches, staring at Adelaide with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She stood before them in her best dress, hands folded to hide their trembling. "Good morning," she began. "My name is Mrs. Thorne, and I believe every single one of you is capable of extraordinary things. We're going to prove it together." Timothy Brennan's hand shot up. "Even girls, Ma'am, especially girls." Adelaide caught the eye of a small blonde girl in the front row. "What's your name?" "Aunt Sarah Carter, Ma'am." "Sarah, can you read?" "Yes, Ma'am. My ma taught me." "Excellent. Then you'll help me teach the younger children their letters while I work with the older students on mathematics." Adelaide turned to the chalkboard Silas had built. "Education isn't about being better than each other. It's about being better than you were yesterday. That's the only competition that matters." The days fell into a new rhythm. Adelaide taught from morning until mid-afternoon, then came home to prepare dinner and spend evenings with Silas. Her belly grew rounder as spring turned to summer, and the children watched with fascination. "Is the baby going to be a scholar like you, Mrs. Thorne?" Timothy asked one day. "The baby will be whoever they want to be," Adelaide replied. "That's the gift of education. It gives you choices." But not everyone in the valley appreciated Adelaide's progressive teaching methods. Reverend Hutchins appeared at the schoolhouse one afternoon in June, his expression stern. "Mrs. Thorne, I need a word." Adelaide dismissed the children early and faced him. "What can I do for you?" "Reverend, I've heard troubling reports that you're teaching girls mathematics, that you're telling children to question what they read rather than accept it." His voice hardened. "That you're filling their heads with inappropriate ideas. I'm teaching them to think critically, to reason and analyze. You're teaching them to rebel against proper authority." Hutchins stepped closer. "Young women don't need advanced mathematics. They need to learn domestic skills, and children should respect their elders, not question them." Adelaide's hand instinctively went to her belly. "With respect, Reverend, I disagree. Education should open minds, not close them. You're a dangerous influence. If you continue this way, I'll recommend to the Valley families that they withdraw their children." Before Adelaide could respond, the schoolhouse door opened. Silas filled the frame, his expression dark. "Did I hear you threatening my pregnant wife, Reverend?" Hutchins paled slightly. "Mr. Thorne, I was simply expressing concerns. You were bullying a woman half your size who's doing more good for this valley than you ever have." Silas moved to stand beside Adelaide. "My wife is the best thing that's happened to these children. She's teaching them to read, to calculate, to think. If that threatens you, that says more about you than her. I won't have ungodly education corrupting. Then withdraw your grandchildren from the school." Silas's voice was steel. "But you don't get to harass my wife. She's answered to me, not you, and I think what she's doing is perfect." Hutchins looked between them, mountain man and educated woman united, and something in his expression shifted from anger to calculation. "We'll see what the community thinks." After he left, Adelaide sagged against Silas. "What if he turns everyone against the school?" "He won't." Silas held her close. "These families want their children educated. They see the difference you're making." But doubt had taken root. That Sunday, a community meeting was called. Adelaide stood in front of the entire valley. Miners, farmers, merchants, their wives and children, while Reverend Hutchins made his case. Mrs. Thorne is teaching blasphemous ideas, encouraging children to question their parents, their pastors, the natural order. She's teaching girls subjects they have no use for. "My Sarah can calculate profit margins now," interrupted Mr. Carter, the mercantile owner. "She helps me with the books. That's useful." "My Timothy reads better than I do," Margaret Brennan added, thanks to Mrs. Thorne's teaching. One by one, parents stood to defend Adelaide, to share stories of children excited about learning, of reading levels improving, of young minds hungry for knowledge finally being fed. Adelaide felt tears threatening. These rough frontier families, many barely educated themselves, were fighting for their children's right to learn. Finally, old Mrs. Chen, the laundress who'd sent her twin grandsons to school, rose. Reverend Hutchins, you say girls don't need education? I came to this country with nothing. No English, no skills white people valued. You know what I wished for? Not a rich husband. Education, the power to understand contracts, to read newspapers, to not be cheated. She looked at Adelaide. Mrs. Thorne gives our daughters that power. That's not blasphemy. That's grace. The vote was nearly unanimous. The school would continue. Adelaide could teach as she saw fit. Hutchins left in cold fury, but Adelaide barely noticed. She was too busy being embraced by rough miners and weathered farmers' wives, all thanking her for seeing worth in their children. Silas waited by the wagon, pride evident in his smile. Told you they'd choose you? They chose education. Adelaide leaned into him. But thank you for standing with me. Always. He helped her into the wagon, his hand lingering on her rounded belly. Our child is lucky to have you as a mother. Our child is lucky to have us both. Adelaide covered his hand with hers. We're building something here, Silas, not just a family, a future where children have chances we never had. As they rode home through the summer twilight, Adelaide felt the baby kick for the first time, a flutter of movement, a promise of life to come. Silas, the baby moved. He stopped the wagon immediately, his hand pressing against her belly, waiting. When the kick came again, his face transformed, wonder and joy and something almost like worship. Hello, little one, he whispered. Your ma just won a battle today. You should know. You're going to have the fiercest, smartest, bravest mother in the whole territory, and the most beautiful, Adelaide laughed through tears, and the most stubborn father who ever loved his family. They sat there as stars emerged, feeling new life moving between them, stronger together than they'd ever been apart. August brought unbearable heat and Adelaide's 8th month of pregnancy. She'd stopped teaching for the summer, focusing on preparing the cabin for the baby. Silas had built a cradle from pine, carved with birds and flowers, and Adelaide had sewn tiny clothes from soft cotton. But the heat made her restless, and one afternoon while Silas was hunting, she decided to walk to the creek for relief. The water was cool and clear. Adelaide removed her shoes, letting her swollen feet dangle in the current, her dress hiked to her knees. Bear lay beside her, tongue lolling. She didn't hear the riders until they were nearly upon her. 3 men, rough-looking, heavily armed, strangers to the valley. Adelaide's hand went instinctively to the knife at her belt. Well, well, the leader said, dismounting. Looks like we found ourselves an angel. Adelaide stood slowly, maneuvering Bear between herself and the men. This is private land. You need to move on. Now that's not very friendly. The man's eyes raked over her pregnant form. Where's your husband? Sweetheart? Close enough to hear gunshots. Adelaide's fingers closed around her knife handle. So I suggest you ride on before there's trouble. The second man laughed. She's got spirit. I like that. Adelaide's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. I'm giving you one chance to leave. Or what? Bear attacked, launching himself at the leader's throat. The man screamed, falling backward. His companion drew his gun, aimed at the dog. Adelaide threw her knife. She'd been practicing with Silas all summer, and the blade took the man in his gun arm. He dropped the weapon with a howl. The third man grabbed for Adelaide. She screamed, loud and piercing, and fought like a wildcat, using every dirty trick Silas had taught her. But he was stronger, and her pregnant belly made her clumsy. Then a rifle shot cracked through the air. The man released Adelaide so fast she stumbled. Silas stood 30 yards away, his rifle smoking, his expression absolutely murderous. Touch my wife again, and the next bullet goes through your heart. The leader scrambled to his feet, Bear still growling at him. We didn't mean nothing, just having fun. Fun. Silas advanced, working his rifle's action. You think terrorizing a pregnant woman is fun? Adelaide had never heard his voice so cold, so deadly. "We're leaving! We're leaving!" The men mounted hastily, the injured one clutching his bleeding arm. "If I ever see your faces in this valley again, I'll hunt you down like the animals you are." Silas's finger stayed on the trigger. "That's not a threat. It's a promise." They fled. Silas waited until the hoofbeats faded before turning to Adelaide. His rifle clattered to the ground as he pulled her into his arms, shaking. "I heard your scream from half a mile away. I ran. God, Adelaide, if I'd been any farther." "But you weren't." She held him tight, feeling their baby kick between them. "You got here. We're safe." "You're bleeding." He'd noticed the scrape on her arm where the man had grabbed her. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." Silas's voice cracked. "You could have been hurt. The baby—" He couldn't finish. Adelaide cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "I'm fine. The baby's fine. Bear's fine. Where is he?" The dog limped over, favoring one paw but otherwise unharmed. Adelaide crouched awkwardly to check him over. "Good boy. Such a good, brave boy." That evening, Silas was quiet. Too quiet. Adelaide found him on the porch, staring at the darkening mountains. "What's wrong?" "I can't protect you." His voice was barely audible. Not completely, not always. Today proved that. Adelaide sat beside him, taking his hand. "Silas, no one can be protected completely. That's life. But you got there. You saved us. What if next time I don't? What if I'm checking the trap line or trading in town and something happens? Then I'll handle it, the way I handled the bear, the way I threw that knife today." She squeezed his hand. "You didn't marry a helpless woman, remember? You married someone who fought beside you. You're 8 months pregnant, which means I'm even more dangerous. I'm protecting 2 lives now." Adelaide smiled slightly. "Besides, you're the one who taught me to fight. You only have yourself to blame for how fierce I've become." That got a reluctant smile from him. "I did do that, didn't I?" "You did. And tomorrow you're going to teach me more, because that throw was good. But my aim could be better." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We protect each other, Silas. That's what marriage means. You watch my back, I watch yours." He wrapped his arm around her, his hand resting on her belly. "I love you so much. It scares me sometimes. The thought of losing you is the same thought that terrifies me about losing you." Adelaide turned to kiss him. "But we can't live in fear. We can only live prepared, alert, together." "Together," he echoed, holding her as the stars came out. That night, as they lay in bed, Adelaide felt Silas's hand tracing patterns on her stomach, protective, possessive, tender. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about names." "Oh? If it's a boy, I'd like to name him James, after my son who died." Adelaide turned to face him in the darkness. "Are you sure? I spent 5 years trying to forget, trying to bury the grief. But you taught me something, Adelaide. The past doesn't disappear because we ignore it. We honor it by living well, by loving again." His voice caught. "James deserves to be remembered, and our son deserves to carry that name forward with pride." James Thorne. Adelaide tested it. "It's perfect. And if it's a girl—" "I was thinking Rose, simple and beautiful and stronger than she looks, like someone else I know." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. "James or Rose, yes, either one is perfect. They made love then, slow and careful because of her advanced pregnancy, but no less passionate. Silas was almost reverent, treating her like something precious and unbreakable, even though they both knew she was strong as mountain stone. Afterward, he held her close, their child moving between them. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For coming into my life with a sack on your head and ice in your veins, for thawing my frozen heart, for making me remember what it feels like to be alive." Adelaide smiled in the darkness. Thank you for seeing past the sack, for cutting my bonds, for treating me like I was worth $200. You're worth so much more than that. I know. That's why I stayed. They drifted to sleep, tangled together, protected by walls Silas had built, warmed by fire he'd tended, surrounded by love they'd chosen. Outside, Bear stood guard on the porch, watching the mountain paths. Inside, a family prepared for new life. The mountains held their breath, waiting for the cry of a child who would be born from courage, raised in love, and taught that freedom was worth fighting for. September arrived with cooler nights and the promise of autumn. Adelaide was due any day now, and Silas barely left her side. He'd arranged for Mrs. Chen, who'd birthed 7 children and midwifed a dozen more, to stay in the guest room, ready for when the time came. The contractions started just before dawn on September 15th. Adelaide woke Silas with a hand on his arm. It's time. He was up instantly, moving to wake Mrs. Chen, to boil water, to do all the things they'd prepared for. But Adelaide saw the fear in his eyes, the memory of his first wife dying in childbirth, the son he'd lost. Silas. She caught his hand. I'm strong, I'm healthy. Mrs. Chen knows what she's doing. We're going to be fine. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay with you. She squeezed his hand through another contraction. And you know how I fight. Mrs. Chen appeared, all business and competence. Mr. Thorne, I need hot water, clean linens, and then you need to stay out of my way. This is women's work. I'm not leaving. You are. Adelaide managed to smile despite the pain. I need you to trust Mrs. Chen. And I need you to not faint on me, mountain man. I've seen men die in war. But this is different. This is me, and you're terrified. Adelaide touched his face. Go check the animals, chop wood, pace, whatever you need, but trust that I'm in good hands. Reluctantly, Silas left. Through the long morning, Adelaide labored, walking when Mrs. Chen said to walk, resting when ordered to rest, pushing when the time came. The pain was enormous, consuming, but she thought of the bear she'd killed, the knife she'd thrown, the life she'd built from nothing. If she could do all that, she could do this. One more push, dear, Mrs. Chen encouraged. I see the head. Adelaide pushed with everything she had, and suddenly the room filled with the sound of crying, strong, angry, absolutely perfect crying. It's a boy, Mrs. Chen announced, placing the squirming, red-faced baby on Adelaide's chest. A healthy, beautiful boy. Adelaide stared at her son, her and Silas's son, feeling her heart expand so much it hurt. Hello, James. Hello, my love. Mrs. Chen opened the door. Mr. Thorne, come meet your son. Silas burst in looking wild-eyed and pale. But when he saw Adelaide, alive, smiling, holding their baby, his knees actually buckled. He caught himself on the doorframe. Adelaide! Come here. Papa. She held out her hand. Come meet James. Silas crossed to them slowly, like he was afraid they might disappear. When he looked down at his son, his living, breathing, crying son, tears streamed down his face. He's perfect, Silas whispered. You're both perfect. Want to hold him? Silas's hands shook as he took the baby, so large and rough compared to the tiny person they held. James quieted immediately, staring up at his father with dark eyes. Hello, son, Silas's voice broke. I'm your pa, and I'm going to do better by you than I did by your brother. I'm going to be here. Every day, I promise you that. Adelaide watched through tears as her mountain man, her fierce, strong, sometimes frightening husband, melted completely for the tiny baby in his arms. He has your eyes, Silas said softly, and your stubborn chin. Adelaide laughed, exhausted and exhilarated. Poor child. Mrs. Chen shooed them. Enough talking. Mama needs rest, and baby needs to nurse. Mr. Thorne, you can have them back in a few hours. Reluctantly, Silas returned James to Adelaide. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." "I know." Adelaide caught his hand, kissed it. "Thank you." "For what?" "For $200, for seeing me, for giving me this life." Silas leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Thank you for staying, for fighting, for being braver than anyone I've ever known." After he left, Adelaide nursed James for the first time, marveling at how naturally it came. This tiny person who was half her, half Silas, all possibility. "Your father," she told him softly, "was a man with a frozen heart, but we're going to keep it warm, you and me. We're going to fill this house with love and laughter and learning. You're going to grow up knowing you're wanted, cherished, free to be whoever you want to be." James made a small sound, his tiny hand closing around her finger. Outside, she could hear Silas chopping wood with unusual vigor, working off emotion the only way he knew how. Adelaide smiled. She'd tamed a mountain man, killed a bear, stood up to a reverend, and now brought new life into the world. Not bad for a woman who'd arrived in a burlap sack, terrified and desperate. The door creaked open. Silas peeked in. "Mrs. Chen said I'm hovering." "You are." Adelaide patted the bed beside her. "But you can hover here if you want." He climbed in carefully, arranging pillows behind her, tucking a blanket around them both. They sat together, parents now, not just husband and wife, watching their son sleep. "I was so scared," Silas admitted quietly. "When I heard you in pain, when I couldn't help, I thought I'd lose you like I lost Elizabeth. That history would repeat itself. History doesn't repeat. It rhymes." Adelaide leaned against him. "But we're writing a different story now, one where we both survive, where we both fight, where love wins." "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's terrifying and hard and sometimes painful." She looked at James. "But it's worth it. Every moment is worth it." Silas kissed her temple. "When you took off that sack and I saw your face, my heart froze, not from cold, but from the sudden fear of hoping again, of wanting something so much it could destroy me. And now my heart beats for 3 people instead of just one. You thawed it, Adelaide, you and this boy." He touched James's tiny fist. "You taught me that love isn't about protecting yourself from pain. It's about being brave enough to hurt if it means truly living." Very philosophical for a mountain man. "I have an educated wife. It's rubbing off." They laughed quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. Outside, autumn painted the mountains in gold and red. Inside, a family complete sat wrapped in warmth. That evening, word spread through the valley. By sunset, the porch was covered in gifts, jars of preserves, knitted blankets, carved toys, a tiny pair of moccasins from an Arapaho woman Silas traded with. Margaret Brennan brought a primer. "For when he's ready to learn, his mama is the best teacher in the territory after all." Timothy appeared with a wooden horse he'd carved himself. "For the baby, Mrs. Thorne. I made it in shop class." Even Reverend Hutchins came, though he stayed on the porch, speaking only to Silas. "Congratulations on your son. I may have been harsh about your wife's teaching methods. My grandchildren read better than they ever did, so tell her I said she's doing fine work." It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was something. As darkness fell and the visitors departed, Silas found Adelaide nursing James by the fire, Bear curled at her feet. "The valley came out for you," he said. "For us, for our family." Adelaide looked up at him. "We're part of something now, not just surviving alone on the mountain, but connected, community." "Is that what you want?" "I know you came here to escape. I came here desperate and afraid, but I stayed because I found home, not just in this cabin or these mountains or even in you." She gestured to encompass everything. "Home is James learning to read. Home is Margaret's friendship. Home is teaching children who hunger for knowledge. Home is belonging." Silas sat beside her, wrapping his arm around them both. I built this cabin to hide from the world, but you've turned it into something better, something alive. We did it together, Adelaide corrected, just like everything else. James finished nursing and promptly fell asleep, his tiny face peaceful. Adelaide handed him to Silas, who cradled his son like he was made of glass. He's so small, Silas marveled. How does something so small hold so much of my heart? It's the great mystery of parenthood. They steal your heart and never give it back. Adelaide smiled. And somehow you're grateful for the theft. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low, holding their son. Outside, the first frost touched the mountains. Inside, warmth and love kept the cold at bay. Adelaide, Silas said softly. Thank you for wearing that sack over your head, she laughed. That's a strange thing to be grateful for. But if you hadn't, if Garrick had seen you first, you might have never become mine. The universe needed you hidden so I could find you. He looked at her with absolute devotion. Best $200 I ever spent. You know what? Adelaide leaned up to kiss him. Best journey I ever took, even with the sack. They put James in his cradle eventually, the one Silas had carved with such care, the one that would rock their son through infancy and perhaps, one day, their grandchildren. In bed, Silas held Adelaide close. I love you, more than words can say. Show me then. Adelaide turned in his arms, despite her exhaustion. Show me how much. And he did, gently, carefully, worshipfully. Not just husband to wife, but partner to partner, equal to equal, love to love. Later, as Adelaide drifted towards sleep, she thought about the girl who'd boarded that stagecoach in Philadelphia, frightened, desperate, wearing a sack of shame. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd fought bears and men and her own fears, a woman who'd found her match in a mountain man with a frozen heart. What are you thinking? Silas murmured, half asleep. That I used to think freedom meant being alone, independent. Adelaide nestled closer. But real freedom is choosing who to be dependent with, who to build a life with, who to love. That's very wise. I told you, I'm the smartest teacher in the territory. Silas chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. And the most humble. Modesty is overrated. But Adelaide was smiling. Besides, you like that I'm confident. I love that you're confident, and brave and stubborn and mine. Yours, Adelaide agreed. Always yours, as long as you remain mine. Always, Silas promised. Until the mountains crumble and the stars fall. You're mine, I'm yours, and we're James's. That's the only truth that matters. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, their son breathing softly nearby, their dog guarding the door. A family forged in frontier hardship, tempered by love unbreakable. The mountains stood eternal around them, and in a small cabin where a frozen heart had learned to beat again, happiness took root and grew. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home during your commute? Or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Adelaide and Silas's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.